Hi, Shelot. Thank you so much for joining us on one of the first of our Fair Talks series with the Arctic Angels. I'm very excited to have you on today and to discuss your work and broader issues about kind of climate change and what solutions we can turn to for tackling them. So you have founded your own organization, She for Earth. Could you start by telling us a little bit about it and your journey to founding it?
Hi, Quinta. Thank you for the opportunity. And yeah, you're right. She for Earth is an organization that is basically finding links between Indigenous practices, mental health, as well as climate change. And we're using all those key concepts to try and connect people in communities in terms of like solving our problems, finding problems within our own communities that we can actually implement within ourselves. Some of them can actually be replicated, but we are trying as hard to make sure that these solutions first are appealing to the local people we are working with. Some of the community leaders in terms of doing activities like eco mapping and eco calendar to make sure that we understand the ecosystems around us, and these ecosystems we can actually, when we know them, we understand how to protect them as well as how to use those spaces to make sure that communities can earn income for the community, which is done by people within the community. There's a community called Maheng. There's a trail there, like a hiking trail. Since the hiking trail is within the community is using that as a way to earn an income for the community, as well as awareness opportunity that people, when they come here, they actually know what is found here, what kind of tree is found here, what does the tree do. Every person that goes there to hike, they pay a certain entry fee to be able to hike there. So the entrance fee, it's also an accountability method or governance that allows people to be aware that you are paying here to enter here, and you need to understand that this place is more like a sacred, place. There's something worth protecting within the trail.
I like that idea of cultivating this connection like with the earth, and you're doing that through education and knowledge building. But are there kind of specific indigenous practices that you will rely on to, teach people and create that notion of like collaboration of the local communities with their surrounding ecosystems?
I think the one that we're using the most at the moment is eco mapping, because the link between business and location is very important, because when business people find land, they just go there and, bulldoze everything. Eco mapping gives us the advantage to understand environmentally where businesses can be best located, as well as what can be done with the species or the type of flora that is found, within, or the type of like plantation that is found within a specific location where people are trying to set businesses or houses.
Could you tell me about your journey towards being an advocate for the climate? How did this begin?
I think my journey began pretty much out of curiosity. Doing my first year in university, that was like back in 2017, and trying to understand the links between the environmental changes and, human behavior, and volunteering in a biodiversity lab at the second semester. From then, I actually started, finding links and connecting the dots, like, plastic pollution. I wrote a poem, I think it was back in 2019, and then it was published in a Bad Life newsletter about, like, the entire activism outlook of the pollution and our human behavior and the consequences. And then interest kind of died down a little bit. Then it came back. when Greta Thunberg surfaced, and then I was like, oh, actually, I wasn't just crazy doing all that. There's something really in there. And then I started getting back into the same thing of like, trying to understand the environmental consequences. I think that's pretty much how my journey started. And I started Shift for Earth. I think it was out of the frustration of being in so many spaces and not feeling like I belong in those spaces because most of the spaces were white dominant and I feel like an outsider. So I was like, maybe I should start something that actually resonates well with me and people or young people like me. There's also a link how the intergenerational, the older people and young people applying all that concept of like reverse mentorship. And that's which actually forms the core of our eco mapping activity.
I wanted to ask you about your experience at COP27, particularly in light of what you were saying about intersectionality, but also of not really finding a space for you and for being able to raise your voice. I'd spoken to a couple of people who were from the missing majority who had kind of been invited to COP but weren't able to go because they didn't have the kind of provisions. But did you find there was space?
That's an interesting question, as well as like kind of difficult to answer because COP27 as a whole, I think, plays where it's a space and not a space at the same time. It's like something you're trying to grab, but you can't. It's just something that you are trying so hard to attain and bring it closer to you so that you can actually finally relate to or finally see and look at. And, you just can't touch it no matter how longer you stretch your hand. So that's how it felt for me. I think as a young person and as a young person from the global south, to be specific.
I was interested in what you were saying about your journey and interactions with professors. And I've been interested by the like label of kind of youth advocate. Do you find it useful?
Personally, it's not useful. I think the more, people refer to me as like a climate activist, the more I realize that I actually prefer my name better than, the label of youth advocate because there's something sinister about it. I don't know, it just doesn't fit. Like, you feel like this is the tone of the term, feels like it comes off as if these are little puppets and we love how they're dancing right now, and it's so entertaining. So, I don't know, I don't find it useful, to be honest.
Quite frustrating at times. I feel like it can be sometimes used as a way to undermine efforts of people. I also wanted to ask you about the links between kind of local change on the ground to then translating it into a widespread, more kind of global movement, which I guess is what Arctic Angels does. Because it's quite an enormous concept to get your head around, that the Arctic, something that the majority of people probably, have never seen. And it's difficult to conceptualize in creating kind of personal links to it. And the work that kind of the Arctic Angels is doing is, to protect the Arctic. How do you find it to kind of, translating the work that you're doing on the ground within kind of very specific communities to this much broader mission?
I think the whole thrill is within the challenge of trying to conceptualize that, into like a global community. But I think I'm kind of like grateful to the Arctic Angels community because when something is so hard to conceptualize, there's like always a space where that conceptualization, being part of the community, is the conceptualization that you need. When you meet people or a certain person, and then you just link, and then you don't understand why you link, you just clicked so easily, and then you look at like, what each of you are doing, differently, or when you are not together, what you're doing, and then when you come together, you realize that all of you are working towards a certain ideal. And that ideal for us as young people, for me as a young person within that community, which is like Arctic Angel community, the common ideal that I've always found is that is consistent, is that we're trying to be young people living in a space which is safe, and we are trying to protect that safe space and trying to correct and improve systems where they are going wrong, or where they're actually flipping and sort of like diverging in a way that puts all of us in danger. So we are trying to protect a certain safety, or trying to make sure that there's safety.
It's such a large undertaking in trying to reform a whole global system. I think it's important to have kind of younger voices who really stress the urgency, but also it is near to impossible task to change this whole system. What is needed is a kind of transformation and a transition. Do you struggle with the idea of having to play along with the system a bit in order to kind of create this transition as opposed to going head to head? Or would you disagree with that and say, no, we need urgent action now and actually kind of real change?
This is interesting. The very interesting part is, I think I love the idea of being able to eliminate a threat to a system quickly. However, there are certain things that you just can't wake up or jump off and decide that, oh yeah, the system is not working for women, or it's not working for the environment. I'm gonna unplug that, plug there. It doesn't work like that. There are complexities. There are gray lines that you need to actually understand them first, and then be able to think about what can you do to drive the change that you want to see, and how can you go about it. What are the resources that you have in your arsenal, and those resources, are they going to get you there soon? Probably not. Systematic change never happens in a snap of a finger. It always takes time. And the question is, how do you present progress or change for something that takes so long to change? So now you have to be like, okay, play along with the system. You can't just wake up and decide that, oh, now because I'm a lawyer, I'm going to remove that judge because he's not judging fairly, or she's not judging fairly, or abiding by law ethics. You need to play along. So it's more like you have to agree, even though you disagree, to get to where you want to be.
Which is difficult. And I guess, as an expert in psychology, do you have strategies for reconciling those two emotions, like the logic of what you were just saying, like you have to play along with it, but also this passionate feeling of urgency and of fear that this is something that is incredibly serious? Do you find, and with the people that you've kind of worked with, are there discussions about that?
There are discussions about that, people trying to reconcile between logic and emotion. How do we actually find the balance? I think to some people it comes quite naturally to find the balance of reconciling emotions and logic, and to some people logic takes the lead, and to some people emotion takes the lead. You have to understand your strength, but it's difficult to do because now you are working on a global case. It's a complex thing. And it's not easy to tell people, calm down, we have to sit down and figure this out or map this out, or let's cry, it's okay to cry. And it's kind of like it's always conflicting, when logic and emotion are in the room, and finding common ground for the two is often difficult. So my strategy is building a community, a team. There are people that are best at, logic. You assemble those, you see them, we know them, and then we have people who are good, with things like emotion, empathy, people who are good with grounding others and all of that. We assemble that. We don't have to have all those components or elements in one person. We can have them in as a community, as a team. And I think that's my term of teamwork.
Yeah, it's holistic, but also I kind of feel like you're saying collaboration is really key here and at the center of it.
Yeah.
Although that you as an individual are still kind of carrying a lot of the weight, but then part of the larger network of Arctic Angels is that collaboration where you can share those emotions or share those strategies. That's really important. Finally, what is your favorite Arctic animal?
The polar bear.
The polar bear. Okay. Why?
It's calm. There's just so much stillness in the way that it walks. It's so confident. I've never seen a polar bear, rushing to things. It assesses and analyzes situations quite well, and yeah, always understands, how it moves, which I think that's admirable.
Thank you so much for chatting to me today.